All right, so let's get right into it. What if the real battle for the future of money isn't just the US versus Europe? What if it's the West versus everyone else? We're about to unpack a pretty provocative analysis that says all this talk about the euro replacing the dollar, it might just be a complete mirage, a smokescreen for a much, much older power game. So the whole thing kicks off with this one single moment. Picture this. It's 2025. The president of the European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde, steps up to a microphone and basically asks out loud, is the US dollar's time up? I mean, that's the kind of statement that doesn't just make headlines. It sends actual shockwaves through the entire global financial system. It screams power vacuum. Okay, so the euro is just going to step in and take the crown, right? Seems like the obvious next step. But what if that's not the real story? An analyst, Munawar Abadullah, puts forward a pretty radical idea. He says this isn't about finding a new king for the financial world. Nope. He calls it an old colonial fantasy. Basically a last-ditch effort to keep the power exactly where it's always been, even while the rest of the world is changing. And that is the mystery we're getting into. Now, let's look at why this whole challenge to the dollar even seems plausible in the first place. I mean, at first glance, it makes total sense. For as long as most of us can remember, the dollar has been king, untouchable. But if you look a little closer, you start to see some pretty big cracks in that foundation. And the first crack, it's a big one. $38 trillion. That's the US national debt. It's a number so huge, it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around it. And the analysis we're looking at says, look, a number like that, it just eats away at your credibility. How can you be the world's bank when you're that deep in debt? But the debt might not even be the worst of it. According to this analysis, the biggest wound was totally self-inflicted. The moment Washington decided to freeze Russia's reserves, everything changed. That sent a message to every single country on Earth. Your money isn't just money, it's a political tool. The dollar could be turned into a weapon at any moment. And let's be real, you can't be a weapon and a safe place to keep your cash at the same time. So with the dollar looking shaky, guess who sees an opportunity? Yup, Europe. The euro's big moment arrives. But the question is this really about making a better, fairer system for everyone? Well, Abdullah's take is not a chance. He's super skeptical. He argues it's all about making sure the power stays right where it is, inside that same exclusive Western club. And this quote, it just nails the whole argument. That's not reform, that's continuity in disguise, you see? The idea is that swapping the dollar for the euro isn't some big revolution. It's just moving the head office from Washington, D.C. to Brussels. The face at the top might change, but the game and who wins it stays exactly the same. So what's the real motivation here? Why this push? This is where the analysis really drops the hammer. It says this whole thing isn't really about spreadsheets and interest rates. It's about a mindset. A deep, historical, colonial mindset that just can't imagine a world where power isn't held by the West. And check this out. This is a really cool way to visualize the argument. The idea is that the tools of power have changed, but the goal is the same. So back in the day, it was muskets and ships. Now, it's monetary policy. Instead of straight-up resource extraction, you have digital regulation. And that old excuse of civilizing the world, well, now you've got things like engineered inflation. The weapons are different, but the thinking behind them, not so much. Okay, so if this grand plan to just pass the torch from the US to Europe is doomed to fail, we have to ask why. Well, the analysis boils it down to two huge problems. First, an American blunder that absolutely wrecked global trust. And second, a European mirage, basically a complete misreading of how power actually works in today's world. Let's unpack that American blunder, because the chain of events is super clear. Step 1, the US uses the dollar as a weapon, freezing Russia's money. Step 2, this tells every other country, whether you're in Brazil or China, hey, your savings are only safe as long as you play by our rules. So, what's the logical third step? Predictably, all these countries in the global south start thinking, maybe we need another option. They start building alternatives, which is the exact opposite of what the US wanted to happen. And that brings us to the European mirage. What does that mean? Well, the analysis says it's this old-fashioned idea that military power is what makes a currency strong. That might have been true back in 1945, when having the biggest army meant you could control the economy. But today, the argument is that's totally obsolete. Real economic power, the kind that backs a currency, is built on something completely different. And this is what that something different looks like. It's a perfect picture of the new reality.
You've got Europe's industrial power shrinking, while at the same time, China has created this monster of a productive ecosystem. And here's the key takeaway. In the 21st century, the strength of your money isn't based on military parades or fancy declarations. It's based on what you can actually make and sell.
So, you have the US making its blunder and Europe chasing this mirage. How is the rest of the world responding? Well, it's not with tanks or loud speeches. The analysis calls it a quiet rebellion, and it's being led by the new economic powerhouses of the global south.
And what does a quiet rebellion actually look like? Well, the BRICS countries, China, India, Brazil, South Africa, they're basically building a whole new set of financial pipes. They're setting up their own payment systems, creating instruments backed by actual stuff like gold or oil, not just promises. And the whole point is to protect themselves from being cut off by Western sanctions. Now, the analysis makes it clear this isn't necessarily an anti-West thing. It's a pro-sovereignty thing. It's just a logical move when you feel like the current system can be used against you.
Okay, so where is this all going? When you put all the pieces together, the analysis points to one inevitable future, a completely new financial world built on a single, simple rule: production beats policy. And this chart just lays it out perfectly. You've got two competing ideas about power. On one side, you have the West, which relies on financial engineering. The analysis calls this the financial fantasy. And on the other side, you have the East and the South building their power on industrial production, on actual factories and resources, the real economy. Which brings us to the core, powerful takeaway from this whole thing. You can play financial games for a while, but you can't escape reality forever. Sooner or later, real value, the kind you can touch, comes from making things, from the physical world. And in the long run, money always follows matter. So what's the world going to look like? Now, to be clear, the analysis isn't saying the dollar is going to zero tomorrow. Not at all. It's talking about a post-monopoly era. Think about it. A world where the dollar is still really important, sure, but it's no longer the only game in town. It has to share the stage with China's yuan and maybe other currencies from countries that are actually producing things. And that really leaves us with one final huge question to chew on. As this new world order starts to form, who's going to have the real lasting power? Is it going to be the countries that can print money out of thin air, or the ones that can actually make the stuff we all need?